On this episode of AV Week, we talk about securing AV products, user interface experience, and selling to multiple decision makers. All that and more. Next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 376, recorded Friday, November 9th, 2018. Comfort level.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Sure, because every voice matters.
And by Extron Electronics.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week, first and foremost, her name is Megan Dutta, and she is over all content creation, everything for SCN and all sorts of things over at Future. Welcome, ma'am.
Welcome. Glad to be here.
Also with us is my buddy Steve Greenblatt. Steve is the Chief Muckety Muck over at Control Concepts, also the host of our State of Control podcast. Welcome, sir.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Thank you, sir. Also with us is Chaz Porter. Chad is from FSR. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Tim. Glad to be here.
And I just want to mention the fact that this is not the first time I've seen these folks this week. I got to hang out with them at Avix's AVWeek the first part of this week, and I actually got to hang out with Megan last night in Chicago, and we'll talk about that towards the end of why I was in Chicago. Megan lives there, but I don't, so just up the state for me. All right, first story we're going to kick off here actually comes from SCN and AV Network. Nareva is integrating single sign-on into their SPAN workspace, and what this means is later this month, the SPAN workspace administrators can control user authentication, implement multi-factor authentication, and enforce password complexity parameters throughout their cloud SSO service providers. What this means, and if you're not familiar with what single sign-on is and multi-factor authentication, it's a security protocol. It's a security issue. Steve, I want to start with you actually, because you've talked a lot about this on State of Control. When it comes to security protocols like this and security measures like this, is this something that other manufacturers other than Nareva can take as a template and apply to some of their products? Because that's something that we've talked about before, where ways that AV manufacturers can help make AV networks more secure.
I'm sure it's something that everybody's thinking about. Security is definitely the more secure that you are, the better I think you'll be perceived in the market. Of course, unless the security ends up becoming something that stands in the way of the device functioning or makes it too complex to integrate. One of the things that we're actually seeing, we're doing some development with devices, and actually had this conversation with my team this morning, is that more and more devices are introducing security into their API. And that's something that we're going to have to be more in tune with, and more of the languages and the platforms from the control side are going to have to be supporting an additional capabilities to be able to provide security and those handshakes and make sure that the communication, the connections, and also the way the devices operate the security is becoming more prominent.
Megan, according to the article, 25% of organizations are implementing some sort of security like this, some sort of SSO integration. Education apparently is leading it at 40.3%. We spent a lot of time this week at AVWeek listening to numbers and facts and figures. Do facts and figures like this help integrators when they're trying to implement something that may not be maybe in their wheelhouse, but also in talking with their clients, saying, look, you guys, there's a lot of people that are already doing this. This is something that you might want to consider putting into your system and into your network.
It definitely can. I mean, when I worked in marketing, my number one way of convincing people to do something was to use facts and figures, because anything you have that, any research you have, hard numbers that can support, that's people are more likely to believe you than saying, in my opinion. You can say, this is my opinion, but also here's the facts to back it up. So I think it helps. But I also think we need to be careful when we talk about facts and figures and where they came from. Is this a sampling of 5 people, 10 universities, and 4 of them have this? We need to make sure we're having research that's authenticated and actually means something.
No. Chaz, I want to circle back to something Steve was talking about, whether or not this security is getting in the way for manufacturers, getting in the way of an integration being successful. Is this something where manufacturers can help their integrators get educated on these security protocols and kind of walk them through the process the first couple of times, or do something like you guys do, have education for best practices when it comes to implementation of certain products and features?
Oh, I think as a manufacturer, this is a very hot topic around our office on 2 levels. As an AV manufacturer, it's critical because we all know more and more devices are being hung on the network. And as our business transitions more onto the IT umbrella, our products, like control products, are at risk. I can speak for our company alone. We have 2 individuals. Their full-time job is to handle network security for us. And we are being hacked on a daily basis. I don't know what it is about some of our foreign interests, but they have a high level of interest in FSR because we get hacked daily. So it's a high level of priority for us, and we look at it when we put manufacturing plans together for any product that's going to hang on a network.
Yeah, absolutely. Our next topic, our next article comes to us from AV Magazine. Actually, Megan and SEN has a story like this as well. We'll put a link to both of those. But John Underkoffler spoke at the Wired Live conference in London. If you don't know who John is, John's the CEO of Oblong. Before he was there, though, he was at MIT's media lab, and between those two, he was the technical advisor on a little movie called Minority Report. I mentioned Minority Report. Megan and I went up to Oblong's office in Chicago and got a really nice demonstration. And during that, it was explained to us, and Megan, correct me if I'm misremembering this, that there's a lot of folks who use Minority Report as the dystopian future of digital signage, right? Where you're able to look into my eyes digitally and say, and put up on a billboard, hey, Tim, here's this, that, and the other, here's some hair gel or whatever, I need or whatever. That's not really what that was intended to do. But what John's been able to do is take his experience both in the Media Lab and in Minority Report and create a product actually out of that. And he's talking about user interface and user experience. And he says, quote unquote, nobody is being asked to think in a broad sense about the user interface. And there's no dedicated group of architects or scientists in this domain. The best way to move forward is to look at everything we know around the world, the physical space and relationship and causality that embodies the physical universe, and start building in that. Megan, I'll start with you on this. This one of these things that AVIXA has talked about for years, and before AVIXA, Infocom, talking about the exceptional experience. This year at the Infocom show, they had a course on design, right? User interface and exceptional user interface. Can either somebody like John or somebody in our industry really take us in the industry, both from a user interface experience, the folks that create graphical user interfaces like people at Steve's companies and Chaz's, and really kind of move us as an industry forward, but also technology forward to really get into the real user interface and how people really interact with our devices as well as other technology devices?
I think we're seeing it already, but we're as an industry, we're slow to adopt. And I think it's clear we're struggling with it. Some people still don't like that AVIXA changed their name from Infocom, and they don't want to accept that. And I can give an example. We did an experience designers list that's going to be published shortly. And looking at the submissions, a lot of them were just regular integrators, audio designers. So I don't think people even understand sometimes what that means. So it's finding a commonality and a definition for the industry, and then working with people to create that, and then create jobs that specifically do that. And I know there are some manufacturers that are into that and have started doing that already, but it's going to take time.
Chaz, same kind of question of where manufacturers can take this. You guys have a graphical user interface for your control system. This is something where you as the manufacturer, how do you guys help our integrators get a handle on what exactly and how exactly the users are interfacing with this technology?
Tim, this whole conversation takes me back about 30 years. It's interesting. I worked as a manufacturer's rep back in the computer business 30 years ago, and we represented a device that you connected to your Macintosh computer, and it let you actually use voice commands. Imagine that, voice commands. And it was a colossal dud. And why was it a colossal dud? Because the user never really had that aha moment. And fast forward 30 years, and we're all talking about voice interfaces, Alexa, and I think everyone on this panel has a moment like I had where my iPhone came out with Siri and voice control. What do I need voice control for? Until that day, I'm speeding down the highway and I'm trying to dial a phone number and I can't find it. And I look up and I'm 3 lanes of traffic across the highway. A little bit of exaggeration, but everybody's had a moment.
Yes,
like
please
that.
tell me you're exaggerating.
Yeah. But guess what? The next time I use Siri to dial a phone number, we haven't had that aha moment in the industry to push us to the next level of interface. I think I agree that we need to start looking at the interface and making changes to it and improvements to it. But I think we haven't hit that aha moment yet.
All right, Mr. Greenblatt, you're the control programmer here, and Control Concepts does this on a full-time basis each and every day. Is it you? Is not necessarily you. I'm not picking on you, Steve. But is it the control systems programmers? Is it the graphical folks who are going to drive this, or is it somebody else?
So the emphasis on user interface it tends to kind of ebb and flow, in my opinion. In our experience in the industry, we went from trying to do something that was really dynamic and very eye-catching, and that became the showpiece, to becoming very simple. And the flat graphics is the good example of that. We want to tone it down and use less buttons and keep it very basic. So I feel like the conversation needs to be more about user experience than it does about user interface, and that's really where our focus is trying to be able to provide the client with a customized and easy to operate for them, in their mind, easy to operate way of being able to interact with technology. And sometimes that's user experience, sometimes that's user interface, but sometimes that's providing automation for them and having things done in the background and being able to make the system more intelligent. And I think that's the main shift of where we need to be going in the industry. Of course, user interface is part of that, but I don't think that it tells the whole story. It's also how the operation of the system becomes more personalized, and how to be able to provide more comfort and to be able to, I think, start to leverage more IoT and be an AI and so forth, and be more of a predictable functionality than just a static functionality.
I want to pick on something you said there, Stephen. That's provide more comfort. And I will start with Megan on this, and then go through you guys again. Megan, do you think that is maybe a product of the generationals? And the reason I ask that is this: is Chaz referenced the fact that voice control was introduced 30 some odd years ago with a secondary device, an outboard device, to move voice control into a Mac, right? And what maybe some of you didn't realize is the fact that then he referenced Siri, which was voice control into a Mac. So 30 years ago, voice control into a Mac didn't work, didn't take off, because you had folks who were baby boomers by and large, right? By and large, baby boomers at that point were the vast majority of the workforce. 30 years later, Siri, which again is voice control, into an Apple iPhone, which is a Mac for all intents and purposes, did take off and did work. And now we've got Alexa, and now we have Google Home, and now we have, Apple's smart speaker, and you have a version of it from Harman as well. Do you think maybe some of this is generational, where depending on what you grew up with and what your comfort with, to use Steve's phrase, comfort level, is it going to change as the workforce evolves and different generations come into the workforce?
I definitely think so. I mean, even for me, like, I get really frustrated with my Apple products, but I use them because they're easy for me to use. Whereas my husband, he likes his Samsung phone because he can totally customize it, and he loves that. Which one is better? I don't know, but it just depends on your comfort level. And I think, this generation, we're always like, well, they grew up with technology, they understand it. But say in 15, 20 years, are they still going to understand the next generation of technology? Probably not.
Yeah. Chaz, same kind of question. What is comfort for each generation and each of the different age groups within FSR?
That's an interesting question. I just got my 89-year-old father and 87-year-old mother to use an iPhone. So what we're comfortable with as an interface was a very long and difficult learning curve for them. And I think that's always going to be the case. As more and more technology gets proliferated into the world, the younger people tend to be more of the early adopters, and it works its way up into the workforce.
Well, Steve, Chaz mentioned early adopters. How much of a bleeding edge can user interface designers be? Because there is, again, to use your word, that there is that comfort level. You still have to make sure people are able to use it and feel comfortable using the interface. But how cutting edge can they be?
I actually think that they need to leverage what's known already and what people are used to and comfortable. And well, I don't want to repeat the word comfort, but
I'm beating that comfort word to death. So you go right ahead.
And in this article, they talked a lot about the Mac interface, right? But
yep.
And I think that the Mac interface was really revolutionary. But is that really what people identify with, or is it the iPhone interface? That's the one that we keep getting, and now what we're getting is Zoom, and that because it's simple and it works, and that's what people like. And so I think you have to leverage what somebody knows already. A lot of the conversations we're having now stem from just that. If a client or an organization is invested in a platform, they want to be able to take that platform that they already know, and that is at the desktop and they've invested in, and then use that as the basis for their user interface, rather than taking a custom user interface and taking these other products and integrating them into this new custom user interface.
And not to beat the Apple to death, but they were the first ones to mass market the mouse, right? Now, they didn't develop it as many Apple products. But they took it from IBM and said, we think this is going to be something. IBM disagreed with them, and they said, okay, knock yourself out, have it. I'm simplifying the story. Please don't write me. But they're the ones who really kind of let it go, let it go off. And same with the graphical interface. I mean, the fact that we have icons and folders and stuff like that on our desktops now is because the first Mac was the first one to do it, and the Windows operating system came along and borrowed from that as well. So I think you're right, is figuring out what people are comfortable with and going on from there.
Can I add to that one more?
Yeah.
I think one of the things we're kind of missing is and it comes back to the research, and we talk about this a lot, but we're designing for what the end user wants in terms of the end user, that's the integrator's client. And I think we need more research on what the actual end user, the person that's using it in the day-to-day life, how they want to interact with it. Because the person that's, in an AV or IT role, they know how to use this stuff. It's very simple for them. But is it getting adopted actually, especially in the workplace? Because those people don't necessarily know how to do it, or that's not the way they want to do things, the way their phone is set up. They don't want to do things the way we have it set up.
Yeah, that's spot on, because that's one of the things is you have to figure out who your actual user of the technology is, not your client, but who the actual, the consumer of your technology. All right, guys, last story here comes to us from Commercial Integrator. They did research and study of their own with their readers, talking about who's making the decisions in when it comes to meeting technologies and meeting room technology. And I find this interesting. There's 2 points I want to point out here. Number one is, how much does a typical consumer spend on meeting room audio? Vast majority, 60% almost, $1,000 to $5,000. Other ones on there was $10,000 or more at 7%. Between 5 and 10,000 was at 30%. But the other one I want to drill down on here is, who is typically your client's most influential decision maker? And Chaz, we'll start with you on this. It was split 3 ways, basically. I mean, between 22%, 28, and 30%. The IT manager, the C-level, the C-suite, or the owner, and the manager specific to your client's business or department. How then do you, as a manufacturer, and how do these integrators go set about targeting the right person when you have 3 separate types of people, 3 separate needs, 3 separate pain points? How then do you go about selling to these folks when you have basically a 3-pronged decision process?
It's funny. I have this conversation with friends frequently when we talk about the customer set in the AV business. Frequently, there's so many people involved when we have a technology-enabled room. We have the architect, we have the consultant, we have the building owners. Now we're even seeing that the GCs working on the jobs have influence in the equipment that goes in the room. It's very complex, and we spend an awful lot of time, energy, and finances tackling all these different channels. We have people that are addressing specifically the architecture channel. We have people going after the commercial real estate channel. It's a complex matter.
Steve, same kind of question is how do you design and how do you roll out back to the last question, a user interface that's acceptable to everybody when you have 3 different types of decision makers?
Well, I think carefully. So,
okay.
It's important to get to know the client, and I think if I could just kind of talk about some of the things we learned at AVWeek recently when all of us were there, is that it's important to listen to what the client is asking for and what they know and what they bring to the table, and I think that's where it stems from is finding out what is the objective, what is the goal that they're trying to achieve by investing in technology, and that was another comment that was at the event, and I think start from there to be able to design the proper solution.
Megan, one of the things Steve referenced AVWeek. One of the interesting parts about this year's AVWeek, which is a departure from the last few years, is they had an entire afternoon of discussion panels, right, where they invited folks, whether subject matter experts or actual end users in the different verticals. They had sports venues, they had education, they had architects and stuff like that. How does an integrator wrap their head around this, of getting folks to buy into what it is they're selling and to develop a proposal when they do have so many different and varying, I guess, buyer dynamics or buyer portfolios?
I think that's the $1 million question, right?
I am asking it.
If I could do that, I would be number 1 on our top 50 integration list. No, but in all seriousness, I think you kind of have to divide and conquer and decide what market you're going after, and then research in that market. Like, mid-sized companies want X, but large global corporations want Y, and super small companies want Z. You have to find a way to generally categorize people and kind of live within those rules when you're selling things.
All right, I think that's a good place to stop. Real quickly before we get out of here, I mentioned the fact that Megan and I spent an awful lot of time this week. We were both at AVWeek, but last night, we're recording this on Friday, the 9th of November. Last night, Thursday the 8th, was the Chicago area's very first of Women of AVWeek's group. Is that right? Not council, not chapter. Group.
AVIX, yeah. So they're all called groups. It's the AVIXA Women Chicago Metro Group.
Okay, and it was the fall ball. And real quickly, if somebody's interested, we've done a lot of stories. You guys have done stories. We did a special with a number of the local chapter, the local group leaders. If somebody's interested in getting one started in their own region, whether it's in the U.S. or outside the U.S., how do they do that? So it's very simple. You sign up for the council, which is on AVIXA's website. You have to be an AVIXA member to start off with that. You have to be an AVIXA member. There's a form to sign up for the council, and on the form it says, I'm interested in being a local leader. So if your region doesn't have one yet, you can start it. We look for usually 2 or 3 people to do it because it's very difficult for one person to carry all of that. So finding a team in your local region, and just reach out to Amanda at AVIXA, and she will help you get started. Very good. Go by AVIXA's website, which is avixa.org. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Mr. Greenblatt, sir, thank you. And how do people find you or Control Concepts?
I could be found on social media at Steve Greenblatt, company controlconcepts.net, but check out A State of Control. That's really where you can find us every month. So Rich Vergoza and I and our guests, we try to do evergreen topics about control programming and automation. So check it out.
All right, very good. Mr. Chaz Porter, thank you, sir. How do people find you or FSR?
You can find FSR at fsrinc.com, and you can find me at Chaz_FSR on Twitter.
All right, very good. And Ms. Dada, I got to hang out with you one last time for the year in person yesterday. So thank you. How do people find you or SCN or Future?
So if you want to read all of the latest news, go to avnetwork.com. You can follow us on Twitter at SCNMag, and you can follow me on Twitter at Megan A. Dutta.
All right, very good. Don't follow me on the Twitters, although at this point I'm still rooting for the Bears, who are in first place, I would like to point out. Last week, I was the world's biggest, probably the world's second biggest Patriots fan, because they successfully beat the Packers. Thank God. But the website, if you would please, Chaz is a Patriots fan, so go by the website if you would please, AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. If you're interested in digital signage and how to create content, we have a webinar for that coming up actually this Wednesday. We're posting this on Monday the 11th, so come Monday the 12th rather. Check that out. It happens this Wednesday at 1 o'clock Eastern on how to create really great content consistently for your digital signage. Some really smart people and me asking them questions. Also, while you're there, check out our underwriter section. These are the folks who help us financially, help us bring you AVWeek and Digital Signage Week in about 2 or 3 months' time. It'll bring us Integrated Systems Europe. FSR is one of those folks. We thank them for their support. So check all of that out and more, and our weeklies and our monthly programs as well. So all that at avnation.tv. AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.